All right, November 6th and episode 4. We got some momentum here, Austin, and there's lots of interesting things happening. So I shared the docket with you. I'm actually going to start with the last item first. This is breaking news apparently from today, but Reuters apparently has an investigative report out that revealed that Meta has an internal projection that 10% of its 2024 revenue, 10% of the revenue, so roughly $16 billion came from ads promoting scams or illicit products. Now, this is not obviously, this is a developing story. I'm sure there's no commentary from Meta, but can you believe that? 16?
I'm not, my first reaction is I'm not surprised. Are you?
I know, but it's crazy, man. Like if you extrapolate this to all advertising, right? I think there's like roughly about $1 trillion of advertising that happens globally. And we're basically saying if you believe that the fraud rate is the same on other, platforms, we're talking about $100 billion of scams. And like just imagine the economic impact of that. And it's, I mean, I can't blame Meta. It's a hard problem. Like, how do you know what is scam and what is not? Like, this is a particularly tough problem, but it's just wild to me.
I'm not surprised, but I also wouldn't necessarily hold the same scam rate across all channels. And there's also this question here without more information about what is considered a scam versus like a really poor product, right? Because all of us have gotten ads, especially on Instagram, and then you go buy the product because they make it so easy, and the thing shows up and you're like, what the hell did I buy? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And that is probably not a scam, right? So there's this question though of like, it's so easy to run advertising and it's so easy to be on these platforms, and there is a formula for driving business growth, and there are lots of bad actors out there, and how do you protect yourself, and how do you actually know? This gets into like more of a meta theme around like truthiness and, what is real and authentic on the internet now that AI is able to create anything for us.
Oh my God, so true. And I mean, this is going to get crazier. Like, I think this rate is very hard to push down. And this is also why, I mean, you've been in a bunch of fintech businesses, right? The same thing happens in fintech, right? You get a bunch of people just signing up for all the fintech accounts, and it's all just fraud, fraudsters trying to scam other people. Like, it's just the nature of the internet, I guess. But 10%, oh, that's like you could have an entire business like worth, 100 billion just doing this, which is wild. Okay. In other news, so all of the Q3 earnings came out for, the large sort of tech platforms. So we had Google, we had, obviously Meta, Reddit, Amazon,
what is it called now?
Pinterest.
It's like Fang plus AI. What do we call this?
I don't know. Mega. Some people call it Max 7, but like I'm focused on the ones who are in the advertising business, right? So I'm like Reddit, Amazon, Meta, Pinterest, Applovin, Google. And here's what's wild. Like we hear about the slowdown or some type of like, oh, is the economy doing okay? But look at these numbers, right? So Reddit grew 74%, the advertising revenue year over year. Amazon's advertising revenue, 24% year over year growth. Meta's ad revenue, 26% year over year growth. Pinterest is 17%, 17 year over year growth. Applovin is 68% year over year growth. And Google, I think, came in at also some crazy like 25, 30% year over year growth. It's just, advertising is just not slowing down, right? Which is, like every year we just see 20%, 30% year growth, and the story in Q3 was the exact same.
I mean, probably the most surprising one when I look at this list is Pinterest. I'm a little surprised by that. Which one surprises you the most?
To me, it's actually Amazon. You look at, I didn't expect their advertising revenue to be that much, but there's an interesting sort of story here that they're going bigger and bigger into competing for everything outside of the walled garden, right? So if you're Meta, you're Google, fine, but everything else that's happening on the internet, Amazon's making a big push. So they're going after, Trade Desk and the open web, and basically trying to own all programmatic. So they have their own properties like Prime and what have you, and they're making deals with NFL and blah, blah, blah. But then you can now go to Amazon and buy inventory for other publishers. And the way that they're getting those publishers on board is basically saying, hey, we've got all the commerce data. We'll pass you, some of that commerce data. And essentially, it's a win-win for everybody. So it's an interesting play. So I'm surprised by how big that number is. Like and I wouldn't be surprised that that becomes bigger and bigger part of their business going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm also surprised how small Reddit is. Like
Yes.
not even
Yes.
a billion. Up
Nope.
74%. Obviously there's gonna be a lot of growth, but when I think about like classical B2C marketing channels, I often see Reddit as being the second tier channel you approach after Google and Meta. And that doesn't reflect reality, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you look at Applovin. So, I think what's happening with Applovin, I've been spending a little bit of time with their team, is they're just on this very positive trajectory with their advertising revenue when they've opened up Axon, and that's their sort of e-commerce push. And I think they have their eyes set on sort of a broader ecosystem. So I wouldn't be surprised if that Applovin number continues to creep up as well. And I was surprised by that because I was talking to some of the team members there, and Applovin was like, "Oh yeah, we've got 150 million daily actives in the
Across
U.S.
across their advertising
across."
platform.
Yes. So here's how it works, right? So basically, if you are a user of a mobile game, right? So you play Candy Crush, or I'm not a gamer at all, so I'm going to get all the references wrong here. But if you're a mobile gamer, the ad inventory in those mobile games is powered by Applovin. Like they're the biggest player in that market. And my perception of that whole market and that audience was like, it's like, I don't know who those people are. Maybe they're all kids or whatever. It turns out the audience is very diverse. It's all the way from like 15-year-olds to like 60-year-olds. And these people are spending a ton of time on these mobile games and different types of games. And they have the attention. Applovin has got their attention, and they've created these like ad formats that are kind of like video ads. They're unskippable because that's how the game publisher monetizes them. Right? So they're like free games, and then you have an unskippable 30-second ad. And what are you doing? You're just on your phone and you're playing a game, and you have this 30-second. It's for free. Like it. I think there is something pretty interesting that's going to happen with Applovin and growth outside of like just ads for other mobile apps and ads for e-commerce, and that's pretty exciting, at least from a advertising and brand perspective.
Well, yeah, and I mean, two things that come up. One is I imagine that GPT's new AI creation doom scrolling app like probably has this written all over it. Go create an AI video, watch an AI video, have free advertising. So I'm sure they're thinking about that. And then the other thing I forgot is that Applovin owns Adjust. And for people who don't know, Adjust is one of the original MMPs, the mobile measurement partners that does attribution. And even though attribution is not as great on mobile as it used to be, I can imagine that if they have thousands and thousands of companies using Adjust for mobile attribution, and they have millions of individual consumers who are looking at those games, often maybe using Adjust, they probably have a pretty good understanding of who these gamers are, and they can sell that data to, or at least provide some analysis of that data to advertisers. And so when you are targeting, they probably have a much better ability to target than other folks who don't have a mobile measurement partner. It reminds me a little bit of like both Amazon and Facebook, in that if you control the platform, you have more you have the potential for a better outcome. And here they've kind of created a platform because they are an MMP as well as having Axion.
Yeah, it's definitely like an interesting play and very different from all the other ad tech platforms. So I'm, there's a lot of diversity there, and I don't think that brands have figured it out yet, right? Like I don't think everybody is like paying attention to Applovin as much as they should. Like there's a small section of e-commerce companies that are, but like not everybody else. Okay. In other news, so do you know Kevin Indig? Have you heard of that name?
Mm.
Okay, so he does a really nice Substack on all things SEO. And I wanted to share something that I'm trying to figure out where to get the he basically published this report on what's happening with LLM traffic. And what he did was in December of 2024, he looked at like 5 or 8 B2B sites. And so this is just a B2B sort of focused thing. And he said, like, how much of the traffic for those B2B sites is coming from these LLMs? And he just kind of then tracked it over time and see, like, okay, are these things growing? Are they flatlining? Are they, kind of declining? And what's interesting is in his latest Substack, he put this chart out. So go give Kevin a follow. And what's interesting is that in the last like 3 months, LLM traffic as a referral to those 8 B2B sites going down. I don't know what's causing this, but he had like some really interesting other data points that's showing that usage of all of the LLMs is still going up and to the right, but the citations or the referrals, they're changing quite a bit. And I don't know if that's
Mm.
because, there's a change in just how all of these, LLM providers are, they want to have more time spent on the platform rather than sending you to something else, right? Like that's exactly what happens with lots of other advertising platforms or online platforms. But I'm curious if you have any takes on this. And I haven't personally seen this on Paramark. Like I think our traffic is like fairly flat from LLMs, but curious what you see here in this chart.
Um, it's fascinating. Also, like my first reaction is just like it's cool. So if people don't know about Profound is like a platform that lets you understand what queries people are searching for around your keywords or your company. And this is a whole industry that kind of popped up, I would say, in the last 6 to 8 months. Because if I reflect back 12 months ago, or maybe like 16 months ago, when we were trying to do AEO, what we thought was AEO, the game was, hey, LLMs are basically picking up content. So the game is go write as much content as you can and make it good enough
Yeah.
quality and get it out there. And if you can go from 0 to 100,000 content pieces that mention keywords that are valuable, you have a way to like bootstrap yourself to visibility. And then, so you could do that manually, like as soon as LLMs came out. Then there was a tool I knew of called Byword, and now AirOps is out, and now there's a lot more. And so they've kind of made it easier for people to do that play. But at the same time, there are now tools that kind of show how valuable those citations even are, and if you're being found. And now what you're suggesting is like the third piece of it, which is as tools to power all this has come up and tools to understand how it's being used have come up, there may be underlying model changes or perhaps traffic changes amongst the LLMs to not even rely on citations as much anymore as a response to what's happened in the market. But it's all crazy because it's been compressed to like 18 months or 12 months, however you look at it.
Absolutely wild. And it's kind of related to the point we were discussing in the last episode where we were like, hey, 50% of the traffic on or 50% of the new content on the internet is now LLM generated, right? And so I'm sure like there's a circular effect here and all the LLMs are like trying to get ahead of that. It's like, how do you just not become a recursive doom loop of just bad content and bad citations and bad recommendations? And that's, I think, showing up in some of these, declines. And I think this is also just like a current point in time analysis. I'm sure like this will change in the next like 6 to 12 months. Have
The
you played around? Yeah, go ahead.
the thing though that I think is like, because I pulled up that piece that you're talking about, and I feel like the lead is really buried here, like way at the end. So Kevin, homie, you got to put this at the top. The last thing he says to me, the last thing in the article is like probably the biggest takeaway, which is, one, stop expecting direct referral traffic. I actually learned that the hard way. If you expect direct referral traffic, you're actually doing it wrong. Like you're not going to get citations unless you have a marquee piece that mentions your company or product. But tracking it as like another channel for eyeballs makes a ton of sense. But more importantly, if you are looking for direct mentions or citations, it requires a much different marketing approach than I think what many demand gen based companies are doing now, which is like you have to go where the LLMs are training, which is like in original content and third party review platforms. And what are those? That's Reddit, that's YouTube, That's stuff like G2. That's community forums. It could be like a Substack. Like all the places that have original content are the places that LMs are going to train. So the idea that you can just, buy your way to eyeballs, I feel like is really dying and or dead.
Yeah, I agree. I think building on that thing, what's going through my mind is how do you get other people to cite you? Because I'm also realizing this like earned media, right? So in the olden days, like the PR cycle that you went through to get these large publications to cite you or to refer, to link to you, all the backlinking stuff, I think becomes a lot more important because I'm assuming that the more you get cited by other authoritative sources, and this is the classic SEO sort of play, the more these LLMs are also going to want to cite you. So I think there's definitely some alignment here between SEO and AEO, but we'll see how that plays out. Um, okay, I have a question for you. So I've been playing around with um, ChatGPT Atlas. I switched my browser from Chrome to Atlas in the last like couple of weeks, and I'm doing it mostly as an experiment to see if it changes my behavior. To also understand, is this going to change behavior for consumers and both sort of on the personal side and the work side. And I have a lot of thoughts on like what I have experienced in the last like couple of weeks, but I'm curious if you've played around with, Perplexity or, their browser or what are your browser habits right now? And what are you seeing from these AI led browsers?
Oh my gosh. I have the worst browser habits, Pranav. You're going to laugh. Um, throwback. First of all, I was a big Arc fan. I know there are
Okay.
going to be people listening to this who cry a little bit on the inside, but there will also be some people who probably really resonate with that because Arc was a brilliant browser, and it wasn't just like I was on the Arc subreddit the other day, and people were like shitting all over Arc. I think it was a great browser. The things that I love so much about it is like the sidebar, the side left nav bar, brilliant. The embedded profiles so that you could quickly just command tab to go through the profiles, brilliant. And most importantly, they used their own version of like a command K internally in the browser to do really basic stuff. So like you could clear the console, you could clear cache, you could quickly copy a link, you could open stuff. It was like having a version of Raycast built into your browser. And then the fact that it was all Chromium based meant you still had access to the whole library of Chrome based things that exist, like extensions. So I was a huge fan of Arc. So I was very disappointed when they first like pulled Arc and started doing something else. And I was also very surprised when Arc got acquired by Atlassian. But I'm hopeful. I mean, Atlassian's a big company. I think they might do something interesting with it. I would certainly love like an Arc-based browser that lets you pick your model, and like instead of using a GPT browser, you use Arc and it lets you kind of embed the model and kind of do different things. To me, that feels way better. Especially if you're able to like use an API key and somehow connect it to your underlying instance of Claude or GPT. Because I don't really like the idea of being stuck with a single AI LLM for browsing, right? I've checked out the new GPT browser. It's cool. And, there's still like a lot of bugs to figure out. Where I feel like we need to eventually go, though, is like a full context for your computer. The browser is certainly a step, but I would much rather have GPT or Claude have access to everything happening on my computer, including my browser, and have context about all the windows, and have context about all the docs I write, and have context about stuff I'm copying and pasting. And so I don't really have to like move back and forth between windows anymore. It's just like latent context. To
You're
me, that's
basically telling Apple like get your shit together and make like Siri actually work on the MacBook.
yeah, we need an
It's like,
operating
what's
system
taking so
level
long?
AI.
I know. Exactly. I completely agree with you. I think that is the logical conclusion. I actually wouldn't be surprised if there is a team inside of, OpenAI that's literally working on operating system level stuff. I'd be very surprised if there is a Skunkworks project around that. And what's interesting is like we haven't seen Anthropic release anything on the browser front, or maybe I'm mistaken. Like, have they?
Anthropic? I mean, to be honest, I don't know. I'm sure you can Google it. I don't think they have a browser yet, though.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is like I was reading this Martech news piece on how all of these AI browsers are also going to cause some havoc in all of your reporting. Because, Google Analytics or Amplitude or any of these like web analytics tools don't really know when it is one of these AI agents sitting in a browser doing something versus when it's a human doing something. So there's like lots of implications on reporting. And then there's also implications on actually ad performance. So you start seeing, if this takes off and becomes mainstream where people just have these AI browsers doing things on their behalf and your, ad impressions are getting shown to these, agents, are those really, useful or not? Like, it's a really weird environment in the next like 3 to 5 years. Like, none of the data is really going to make sense if these things take off, and I think they will take off. I was also surprised that Chrome hasn't yet fully launched like the Gemini AI stuff in the like core like Chrome browser. Maybe they have, but it wasn't something that I could access. So that's a interesting stuff happening in the browser wars. It's kind of crazy that browser wars are back.
Browser wars are bad, baby. And like every one of these companies is gonna have their own browser. But there will be third parties that integrate, AI via many third parties. And like to me, that's the most interesting space, right? And I actually think Apple, if they were smart, would be leaning into that world where perhaps they have their own AI play, but they are somewhat agnostic on, which AI model wins. Because at this point, they're just so late to the game that unless they acquired Anthropic, which they could totally do, despite all the crazy funding out there, they have the cash to do it. Unless they do that, their best bet, in my opinion, is just to like integrate with everybody else.
Yeah, it's actually, I think I saw this news piece. We didn't put it in the docket, but I just remembered it when you mentioned this, that Apple is actually working with Google on integrating Gemini into Siri. So, uh,
Fascinating.
yeah, so basically working on the same existing partnership, right? Because they have a partnership already for search. And so they're basically just extending that and saying, we're just going to work with Google and take their Gemini model and put it into Siri or something like that. That's at least the headline that I read.
I mean, it's
Um,
it's funny because that just is like it reminds me of the Google search deal in the Safari browser, right? Like Apple and Google are willing to play ball sometimes when it benefits them both.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so I am going to share something with you, which is all right. Announcement fundraiser of the day. I just saw this morning. There's a company called Reevo, Reevo, raises $80 million for I think their Series A from Kleiner and Sequoia, and they're going up right against Clarify, which is probably both interesting and frustrating for you. But the pitch is like, hey, GTM is broken. We're here to fix it. Blah blah blah, and then basically it boils down to we go from first touch to closed one. No more manual data entry. No more wasted weekends and spreadsheets. No more hopping across lead databases. They're calling themselves the revenue operating system, but when I look at sort of the product and the pitch is like really going from lead to closed one, which is really interesting. 80 million bucks, Kleiner, Sequoia. It feels like the CRM category is definitely going up for like a massive fight, right? Just like we had the SEO, AEO stuff happening. Like there's so many well-funded companies in that space. Now I'm like, there's so many well-funded companies in the CRM. Even though they're saying CRM, this isn't CRM 2.0, I'm going to call it this is the CRM 2.0, or maybe I'm curious what you think about it, but just very big launch.
Well, yeah, I mean, uh, I don't know if like I was just late to the game, but like I had literally never heard of them until I heard about the
I think
fundraiser.
they were stealth up until now. They had no presence until like this morning.
Okay. Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, like, if you go to their website, you'll see there's like find, connect, sell, and manage. This is a pretty common playbook because everybody who's been in the CRM space knows that you have to do more, right? Apollo does more than just CRM. Unify is just doing more than CRM. You have to have some revenue generating component. And the thing that drives most operators to use a CRM is the ability to generate pipeline. So I'm not surprised there at all. I also think that there's like a ton of opportunity to consolidate lead capture or like lead creation and enrichment with outbounding. That's certain, like, for example, KeyPlay is a great product but like, shouldn't that just exist inside your CRM?
100%. Yep.
It's happening inside Unify already. You have an underlying TAM database and you can kind of peruse that and create lists. And then everything else doesn't seem too surprising. Like, this feels almost like a direct, expanded competition to Unify, if anything, and maybe attention as well. Because attention calls himself like a sales or
What is
go-to-market.
attention? I haven't seen attention. Is that a new thing?
No, attention's been around for like a couple years. And yeah, these products live on top of a CRM and help draw attention to the deals that are most needed. They have a call recorder, a bunch of the other, feature sets that like you probably have come to see in modern CRMs. And yeah, I don't know if like the thing that seems maybe unique, I guess, is that unlike many of the RevTech platforms that I've seen out there, they're directly calling themselves a CRM, which is interesting. Because that was some of our bet at Clarify, was just, hey, let's be a CRM from the beginning. Let's not beat around the bush and try to call ourselves anything else, because we don't want to confuse people with what we are. But it's certainly a harder road to travel, because then you run into these race conditions where people have an existing CRM, but they might want to use and try your product and they can't.
Yeah.
And then, then the last thing is there's obviously they have like a cool AI product that connects to Slack that lets you talk to your CRM from Slack, which is nothing really new. So I think my biggest reaction though is like, very polished website, really clear value prop. And I can't access the product right now, but from the product demos, looks like a very polished product. So to come out of stealth with such a large product offering and bold product offering seems pretty crazy. So like, props to them.
Yeah. No, it definitely seems very impressive at the surface level. But I think the challenge is always, like you said, you have to adopt the whole platform. And, so your bet is that the people who adopt the platform, they're going to be younger in size and shape, and you grow with them. And that's a very long-term play, right? So it's going to be interesting to, like, if you try to go and, I don't know, sell a mid-market company and try to convert, from like 5 different tool sets to like one unified, revenue operating system, that might be a little complicated, but we shall see.
Yeah, like revenue operating system versus CRM. I don't know. I feel like the market has still not decided whether they want their CRM to have a bunch of tools or whether they want to buy a Rev operating or Rev platform that includes a CRM. And like, that's a little bit of the cat and mouse game that's going on right now, is that there are a lot of tools out there that I believe their strategy is to build some small-ish component of the existing revenue technology stack and then actually grow into being a CRM to compete with Salesforce. And we see that all the time. Unify, Attention, there's probably a dozen other Apollo who have taken that strategy of saying, we're going to do one thing first, and then once we've acquired customers, we'll go build the CRM and attack Salesforce that way. Because if their ambition is to be a company making billions of dollars, like you can't ignore the CRM.
100%.
The alternative strategy though is to like just own the CRM category from the start and then build laterally across all these different product surface areas. But you probably experienced this as a buyer. Like, it's really hard to get your head around an all-in-one solution that's a startup when you're building your own business and maybe outscaling what these AI companies can offer.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And don't get me wrong, like my logical, rational brain says, hey, I want everything inside the same platform, right? I want, and we're, happy users of Clarify. I want as much inside of Clarify as I possibly can, but it's also an unrealistic expectation, given that it's a high growth sort of startup it just takes a lot of effort. And I know how much time it is to build everything. Okay, on that point, so a couple of interesting things happening here on sort of ad creation and AI. Again, I know we talk a lot about this, but given how sort of critical it is for the audience. So a couple of interesting things happened. Google launched its first fully AI generated video ad. It's a really cute ad. It's like a chicken. I don't know if you watched it, but it's a chicken and it's like promoting, if you're planning a quick getaway, just ask Google. So we'll play it. And hopefully you watched that or you heard the audio and we're back. And this is Google putting where, putting its money where its mouth is in terms of taking the leap and starting to generate some interesting creative. What I found really interesting about it is like it's not just AI slop. Like somebody had to think about the setting, why is it a chicken? Like it's creative, it's human, it's funny, and I actually thought it was really well done. So I don't know if you watched the ad, but if you want to take a minute, watch it and tell me what you think. I can't actually play it, so you'll have to do it in the background in your browser.
This, all right. This is oh no, this is terrifying.
Dicey there for a moment.
The voice.
But a quick getaway? Just ask Google.
Honestly, if they just got the voice better, I probably would not have known. Like, it's just, have you ever been on YouTube and you're scrolling and there's that like dumb AI voice that's like, this man did something wild. And you're like, okay, well, this is the AI voice. It's just a little too close to the AI voice. But if they got the voice right, I don't know if I would have known, Pranav.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so there's some interesting research that their chief strategy officer shared on LinkedIn just a couple of days ago, and I put this in the docket. But what they said is there's some new research by some academics at Emory and Stern. So Stern is, I think, New York University. I forget Emory, like which business school that is. But they did a whole bunch of research on the impact of AI-generated content or creative on advertising effectiveness. And this was counterintuitive to me. So what they said is like three things. One is that, and this is obvious, if you tell customers it's AI generated, it just kills your engagement. Okay, that's obvious. But the assumption that they had going into this research was that, hey, if you use humans to generate the content or the creative, and then you ask the humans to use the AI to improve the creative, that's actually a losing strategy compared to letting the AI generate the creative from scratch, which was fascinating to me, right? Because I have been internally thinking, no, I'm going to do all the initial creative research, and then I'm going to add my, AI assistants to improve it and blah, blah, blah. And what the research is saying, no. Let the AI actually take the wheel. You still have to prompt it, but the AI is coming up with the concept and then coming up with the storyboard and then coming up with the visuals rather than it being a mix of the two, which is really interesting. And this is specific to like, generative content for advertising. So the scope is very specific. But it was like a little bit of a, narrative violation for me. I'm curious if you have any takes on that.
I think it depends on the complexity of the problem being solved, right? Like I think, for example, if I were to prompt AI to like do something for me in my niche domain of MarTech, it would absolutely fail. So like I have to start by providing advice first and then having it clean it up. But I think for something like advertising where, it's actually probably targeting pretty simplistic, family-friendly ads, it makes a ton of sense to give it some loose guardrails and be like, hey, we want a Thanksgiving ad with a turkey and just like see what it does, because that is some of the beauty of AI is that it can come up with these unique and creative concepts that humans might not have otherwise been able to. And then the human's job is to vet it and make sure that it's compliant and not super weird. It also just, this whole thing reminds me of like, we're just experiencing every day the roles that AI can and can't play. And I think that there's this assumption that it's going to take over everyone's job. But the reality is like it's going to supplement lots of people's jobs in different ways. I saw this like hilarious video of a director who used generative AI to have them play an actor for auditions. And they're like, oh, I'm going to test an AI generated actor and like put them through, my screenplay and ask them to do different things and see how they do it. And like, it was the most bizarre video ever. It's like this actor like can't totally emote properly. And at the end, he like pulls out a gun, like, but it was kind of creative, but it didn't really understand the boundaries of what it was doing because it doesn't have all the context.
Yeah. It's, one of the points that this, the chief strategy officer at Google made about this research was when AI is modifying the existing ad, it loses a certain amount of authenticity that makes the ad work. And so it's basically like, you hear this often in creative teams, right? Like designing by consensus. And so if you have like 5 people trying to collaborate and come up with some concept, it's like going to be worse than just like one person who's creatively minded and brilliant and just like executing on the whole idea. And so there's some of that which they are talking about. Now, there's a big caveat on this research paper because here's how they define success. They define success by click-through rate. They define success by self-reported purchase intention and perceived effectiveness of the ad. So this was not about, the actual sales that these ads generated. And they did like field studies, they did lab experiments. But if you believe that these are leading indicators of, eventual sales, maybe there is something here. So interesting one to end on today. I don't think I have any other big news items, but I'm curious if there's anything else that's top of mind for you, what's happening in your world,
Yeah.
anything you want to plug into the episode.
I got a question for you because this is now came up like at least 5 times in the last month with different people that I've been talking to. So I'll ask 2 questions. The first is, when you hear the word marketing data platform, what do you think?
Ooh. Oh my God. I think Snowflake, BigQuery. I think I go straight to the warehouse. Just knowing all the complexities, but yeah, that's where my head goes. And I don't think that I have, I don't think of, maybe I think of segment and high touch, but like barely, right? Those are not sort of top of mind for me. It's like your marketing data is living in your warehouse.
Yeah. I've heard from larger companies all month about this concept of building a complete marketing data platform. And when I probe that, I think there's like 2 things going on. One is that this term, when you Google it, like nothing comes up that's useful. It's like, it's not an own term. So there is no such thing. It's like a platform of some kind, but we haven't really defined it. The second thing is, I think what people are really referencing is like there's a data layer, which sure is something like Snowflake and is composable in nature. But actually what they're referencing is kind of like an all-in-one, complete, think of it like a God mode marketing platform. And what's so funny about this is like, this was what I feel like Salesforce and Adobe tried to do 10 years ago and failed miserably.
Yes, that's
because
exactly right.
They started with great products, but then they acquired other products and they never could really figure out how to integrate them properly. And then the market moved on and they weren't able to keep up to date. And so you have a lot, like if you go into a legacy organization, like a Fortune 500, you will find these instances of Adobe or Salesforce that are like really outdated, and people are trying to move now to composable architecture. So a composable stack where, they have a data warehouse and they might have a third-party CDP or a first-party CDP, and they have analytics and they have attribution and they have a CRM, and like all these things are kind of tied together, again, maybe through a tool like High Touch or an RETL. Or maybe they just built the integrations themselves over the last 10 years. But what I'm finding is like there is this desire still, 10 years on, because of the complexity of a composable architecture, for marketers now to move back to the old age and say, isn't there just some way that we could do all this in one place? Because things are really complicated. Take, for example, like an analyst marketer or like an entry-level marketer at a big Fortune 500 company, or even like a medium, say like 1,000-person company. And they're trying to send an email. They're charged as like an email marketer and they got to send an email. Think about all the internal processes they have to go through, the tools they have to use to send that email. They have to construct an audience either in their warehouse or a tool like High Touch. They have to build the content somewhere, get it approved somewhere, put the HTML somewhere, like actually in a tool like Iterable or Braze. Then they have to make sure that the events are connected properly. They have to test it. There are so many steps involved in just sending one campaign. Now, when you start to think about like a multi-channel campaign, which some people call journeys or orchestration, it becomes even more complex. And we both know that like orchestration is just a fool's errand because these tools don't magically talk to one another. So you either have to like create synthetic events to move around. But as I was thinking about this, there is this world coming up where if these third-party tools have APIs, and if we believe that MCP will continue to grow as it is, you could totally have a platform on top of a platform, like almost like a AI layer that sits across your marketing stack. And even though things are not directly integrated, with MCP, it can go and take action in a tool for you. And it can also give you insights about how all your tools are connected, right? So this has just been like on my mind. I was curious if you'd heard about this at all, because it's coming up more and more.
I mean, listen, I don't think this conversation is going to go away, right? Because the problem and the pain is very, very real. The challenge is that the surface area to build something like this is so massive, right? And adoption, and you get this from your Fortune 500 conversations, right? It's like if you try to sell this to a CIO or a, whoever the internal stakeholder is for a marketing data platform, it's a very complicated sell. And you're going against like these, the Adobe Salesforce, the Salesforce, the iterable Salesforce, the Brave Salesforce. They're all going to come in and say like, no, we don't need an MDP. We can do this for you, blah, blah. So it's like, it's a very complicated product to build. And then it's a very complicated go-to-market because it's all sort of enterprise and sales-led. Implementations are, long. Data is like completely messy, and you have to be really good at implementation to get the data organized, right? So in theory, fantastic idea. In practice, very, very hard to execute. And, maybe there is some magic that, MCPs and AI can do, but the place where all this breaks down is that the starting point and the data quality and the data governance is so bad in every organization that it becomes a 6 to 12 month project just to clean that. And, that's maybe the biggest value add of this MDP. If you can figure out how to do that data governance and data cleanup, in your implementation, maybe there's a there.
Totally. Anyways, that's what's on my mind.
Awesome. All right. Well, episode 4. So tune in again next week for episode 5. And fun little news. We did buy GTMN.fm. It's not live yet, but it will be on Substack this weekend. And you will be able to get all the links, the show notes, the summary from each of the podcasts. So there's nowhere to go. There's no call to action, but tune in next week. And by then, we'll have GTMN.fm live. All right. Austin, have a great week.
See you, Pranav. Good one. See you, bud.